Okay, welcome back to the Massive Impact Podcast, episode 015. I'm your host and CEO of the Verada Group, Patrick Wax. My guest today is a very special guest. He's the founder and the CEO of the Kintz Group. He is by far the best dressed guest that we have ever had. He has written 2 books, Fearless and Frictionless, which I'm in the middle of right now and enjoying very much. He has 26,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I believe that his sales techniques transcend the car industry. Tim Kintz, welcome to Massive Impact. How are you?
It's great. It's great being here. I'm doing great, and I'm excited to have a good conversation.
Excellent, excellent. So again, I'm not even sure how I tripped across you on social media, but I did, obviously. Picked up your book. I don't know, the car industry really sort of intrigues me a little bit because most every experience I've ever had has not been the way it should be as a consumer. So we're going to dig into at least one of your books today, but give us some background. How did you enter into car sales in the first place?
By accident, right? I always joke around that the car business is kind of like Denny's or IHOP, right? You never plan to go there. You just end up there at 2 a.m. It's kind of the same thing, the car business. I grew up in a little town outside of St. Louis, played baseball. Lucky enough to get to go to college. Went to college out in Arizona and played there for 3 years. Transferred to a Cal Baptist University in Riverside, California. And then I got invited to go to Alaska to play summer league baseball. So they have guys from all different colleges, and they get you a host family, a job during the day, and you play baseball at night. Well, I happened to be working at the Honda and Acura dealership, washing cars. I was a detailer. And, I knew I wasn't making the big leagues. That dream was done. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I had a friend that, was Major League Baseball making $62,500 a year on his rookie contract, and I was washing cars for $150,000 a year, and I thought, I'm gonna give selling cars a shot. And 5 years later, I'm still in the car business. So I just kind of ended up in it. But it's usually the people that stick to it. It's like the mafia, right? You can't get out of it because you don't need much of an education. You don't have to, have a master's degree or any of that to make a lot of money. You just have to be willing to work hard, put in the time. You're going to put in a lot of hours. You're going to deal with a lot of crap. But if you can fight through all that adversity, you can make a great living in the car business. And it's not just the car business in real life. It's any sales. Mm-hmm. If you can fight through all the adversity and always improve yourself and realize, the customer's number one, then selling's a great job. And I always say that there's no such thing as job security in today's world, right? You can get eliminated tomorrow, but there is employment security. Mm-hmm. And as long as you have the skills, you're employable. And that's the cool thing with sales, no matter if it's furniture sales, car sales, jewelry sales, RV, boats. Right. So that's kind of the digest version of how I ended up in the car business.
Okay. Yeah. And I agree with everything that you say there. It is ironic, though, because even though it doesn't require a formal education to be in sales, to be a good salesman does require some education within the industry, and that's what you bring. So how did you get to the point where you are today? How did you transition from working for somebody else into the Kintz Group?
So I was in Alaska for 11 years, worked my way from detailer, sales, F&I, sales manager, GSM. I went through a thing called the NADA Dealer Academy, National Auto Dealers Association. Graduated from there in March of 2000. And we had probably the worst winter up in Alaska that I remembered. It was between 30 and 50 below zero for like 2 weeks. And I was done. I'm like, I'm not doing another winter. And I applied for a training company who at the time was the biggest training company in the car business. And I was lucky enough to get hired with them. And, I remember I had a lot of opportunities, but one mindset I had was I hated public speaking. I did not like talking in front of strangers, just like everybody, right? It's the number one fear in life, right? Most people, what Seinfeld say, most people would rather be the dead guy in the casket than open up talking about the dead guy.
Right.
because death is number two to public speaking. So it. I thought it was a good challenge, and I ended up doing training, traveling U.S., Canada, Mexico, Russia, all over the world doing training. And at the 13-year mark, I figured I wanted to scratch a new itch or itch a new scratch or whatever it is. And I had a buddy that had me come run one of his dealerships for a year. And after spending about a year back in the dealerships, after 11 years in the dealership, 13 years out, I went back in and realized, wow, there's been lots of evolution. Not necessarily change, but evolution of the business. With how we manage inventory, CRMs, how CRMs are, internet, everything that goes along with it, right? Customers, expectations, and habits. And I realized that, man, we needed some up-to-date training in the business. And I think if I wouldn't have spent another year back in the business, I'd have been doing what I had always been doing, right? Teaching IBM style stuff from the old days. And I left that dealership, had a bunch of people call me and say, hey, when you figure out what you're going to do next, you want to come work with our stores. And before you knew it, I was working with a half a dozen dealerships, traveling around, and then I started doing the Kintz group. So I remember when I went back in the dealership saying, I'm never getting back in the training world. I'm not getting back in it. I'm going to stay in the dealership. And then once I realized the need and how much I loved helping guys get better, right? The law of multiplication. Mm-hmm. That's when I started doing the Kintz group. And it's been fun.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. So Tim, briefly, I told you about my background, my last 3 experiences or so. The car salesman, I kind of viewed them as order takers almost. How is that? What is wrong with the car sales industry as you see it?
I think there's a lot of problems, right? And it's an 8-hour conversation really on problems. We can get into the details of every step and everything, but I think big picture is we had challenges. Obviously, we had challenges in the past. Then we had the chip shortage, and the dealerships were more profitable than they ever had been. And I think everybody got lazy. They were order takers at that point. It was you bought what they had, you paid what they told you were going to pay, or you weren't buying one because there was no inventory. And it wasn't just car business. That was refrigerators, and it didn't matter what it was. And then now we're lazy. We get in the business, and now everybody's just thinking, I want to make money. I got to make money. Our margins have gone down because we've had to discount the cars more because there's more inventory, and everybody's chasing the money. They're very transactional now. It's all about, I want to sell you a car, move to the next. Instead of being relational is, yes, I'm going to sell you a car, and I'm going to sell you every other car you ever buy, and I'm going to do that by taking care of you. I'm going to be a relational salesperson. And I think big picture, that's the biggest challenge. It started with the chip shortage, and then it transitioned into, holy crap, we're not making as much money. We got to sell this customer and then get to the next. We have to do it by volume, and I don't care about taking care of you after the sale. But I think so much of it is the lack of training in dealerships.
Yeah, I love what you just said there about it being so transactional. You hear people say, either on TV or just in life, oh yeah, I got a shirt guy, or oh, I got a such and such guy. I don't really hear people say I have a car guy because, it has become sort of transactional. Good explanation. I wanted to jump in here into frictionless, and I wanted you to just kind of briefly expand on some of these concepts. So one of the first concepts that you mentioned is using both logic and emotion in sales. Expand on that.
Well, I think no matter what most part, not no matter what you're selling. I mean, if I'm selling, ball bearings or something, it's very logical, right? But when you're selling houses, cars, jewelry, RVs, boats, stuff like that, there's an emotional part of it, and there's a logical part of it. But the whole idea is I have to get you emotionally attached to the product, right? I also talk about how my job as a salesperson, no matter what I'm selling, is to create mental ownership, right? You have a need. You either have a problem that I need to solve or a pleasure point that I need to solve, right? There's pain points and pleasure points on why people get stuff. And if I can paint that product into your life, so you come on my lot, my job is to really, I got a blank canvas. I'm painting a picture of your life. So what's the most important in your next vehicle? How are you going to be using that? Where do you guys normally take it? And I'm painting this picture of the customer. Then when I present my vehicle, my job's to paint that vehicle into that customer's life. So before we ever sit down to start negotiating, you've already taken mental ownership. It's a good example is if you ever have a good real estate agent, right? Walk you through the house, you got your kids or whatever, and if they're doing a good job, and if it's the right house, you're talking about how you want to, what color you want the walls to be, if you want new floors, is your furniture going to fit, what else you need to buy. The kids are picking out their rooms, making sure your car's going to fit in the garage. And when you walk out of that house, you've already mentally moved your furniture in. And you haven't even put an offer in on that house yet, right? So you've taken mental ownership of that before you've ever even sat down to start negotiating a deal on that house. Really, with any product, I need to get you to take mental ownership prior to physical and financial ownership. So the emotional part of it is your selling. It's your, you want to call it fact finding, needs analysis, investigation, your rapport building, finding common ground. Then you move into your presentation and demonstration of that product and how it's a solution to their pain point or pleasure points. And then getting a commitment that yes, you love that product. And now when we sit down to negotiate, now it's just a matter of how do we fit this in your budget? Not, I think it's too expensive, right? And maybe it is expensive. And sometimes money does come into play. But if I can focus on the emotional first, I'm going to be a hell of a lot better salesperson in any industry. I think the problem is so many salespeople want to find out what you spend. And I don't want to waste my time unless you're a real buyer, is the mindset so many salespeople get. Instead of spending the time to make you a buyer, they don't want to waste their time unless you're a buyer.
Right.
And you can't, they're a buyer. They're at your store. They're at your dealership. They're in you're showing houses. Whatever the product is you're selling, they're serious or they wouldn't be there. I always laugh. I never had my family on a weekend when I say, hey, what do you guys want to do this weekend? Never have they said, let's go to a car dealership and look at cars.
Right.
No, they go to get sued or have a root canal. They go to dealerships most of the time.
Right. Let's go and kick tires.
Yeah. So now when I sit down to negotiate, now that's the logical part. Now I have to justify. Now I have to show you total cost of ownership. I have to show you how you can afford it. And that is the logical part of it. But if I can leverage emotion and leverage logic, then I'm going to be a great salesperson.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I think your style transcends car sales. So I'm an engineer, right? I see the world largely just black and white. I don't like gray. And, I was thrown into sales in a previous life with no training whatsoever. And as an engineer, I thought, well, this is solely logical, right? If you spend X dollars on us, we'll return X dollars in an ROI. And I got frustrated. Why are people not buying? You got to, like you said, have them make that mental imagery of what their future could look like, at least within manufacturing, but really everything. So I think that's a good segue. You talked about coming back and talking about the budget. And you talk about in your book, Frictionless, negotiating a win-win. And that just seems probably so counterintuitive to so many people. Expand on that.
Well, I think it ties right back into the emotional side, right? It's the customer has to feel like they got a good deal. And I have to make money or we're not going to stay in business and be able to service the customer long term, right? So win is really creating value where, does that value exceed the price? Does the customer feel like they're getting more for that product than what they're actually having to pay, right? I always talk about a good deal. A good deal is a feeling, right? It's perception. And I think sometimes as salespeople, we think it's a number because we're around it all the time. We're very logical. We know what we think is a good deal. We think here's a good deal. I'm making X dollars on it, so that's a good deal. I'm not making 5,000 on it. I'm only making 2,000. So therefore you should feel like it's a good deal. Well, that's not necessarily how I feel because you sold price, you didn't sell value. And creating that win-win is I make the customer feel like they're getting a good deal. And that all is about value. Then I'm making money on it and it's a win for me. But if I'm losing money, that's a win-lose, right? They could feel like they got a good deal. If I didn't make any money, that's a lose because we're not in sales, we're not nonprofit organizations.
No.
And it could be we win and they lose. They feel like they got a horrible deal. They hate your guts. They won't even remember the salesperson's name. But we made a bunch of money on you. Well, that's not our goal either. Lose is they walk out and don't even buy it.
Right. Right. Yeah. The reason I say that the win-win, which makes sense to me, is probably counterintuitive to so many people, is I know of experiences where the car salesman absolutely would have taken his win for my loss, just for the sale, which leads to another great segue. You say in your book, the relationship doesn't have to end after the sale and shouldn't. Expand on
Right?
that.
Absolutely. It's, most people keep their cars, whatever the number, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depends. Um, and it's what are we doing to take care of them, right? What are we doing to follow through, right? We always say we got to follow up with the customer. Yeah, you got to follow up, you got to follow through, right? We tell them all these promises. It's the after sale part. It's, with cars, we got maintenance, we got repairs that need to be done. We need to be there for that customer at any given time. Just like you said, you can't remember your salespeople's names, can
No.
you? Because there was no follow through,
Right.
right? And that's once I always tell salespeople, once you sell the car, that's when the real work starts. There's plenty of people I know in the car business. These guys sell 25, 30, 40, 50 cars a month. And most of those cars they're selling are multiples to the same person, right? It's the repeat business, and the referral business is why they sell so many cars and make money. And their customers are willing to pay that money because they know that salesperson's there. If you chase the money, you're never going to catch it. If you take care of the customer, the money's going to catch you. Really is
Right.
what it comes down to.
Right. Which you kind of took the words out of my mouth here. Next point here in your book, you are in the people business
Yeah.
before being in the car business. Now, explain that to the listeners. How can somebody be in the people business before they even know the person? How do you make yourself in that people business?
I always kind of joke around and say, in sales, you better like people, because if you don't like people, you pick the wrong business. You need to go drive a dynamite truck or a porta potty truck or something. The car business is ending sales. It is the people business, taking care of the person, getting to know that customer. It's not like you're going to be best friends and invite them over for Thanksgiving dinner, right? It's not that, but it's
No.
getting to know. It's John Maxwell always said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? Are you showing that? Are you taking care of that customer? Do they feel that you care about them? Right. And that's what the people business part is all about. It's really, I like to say it's the people business and the attitude business. Then it's sales, because you got to have the right attitude. Take that check up and then neck up before you take your next up is kind of the car business saying. And you got to take that. You do have to take that check up. You got to have the right mindset. And when you have the right mindset, then you're going to take care of people. When you take care of the people, again, it it's just a simple process. I think we overthink selling too much.
Mm-hmm.
I want to sell cars. I want to make money, right? But we never go back to what Colin says is first things first. Take care of the customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about a conversation I had yesterday in Colorado. I was eating breakfast, and this waitress, was taking care of everyone, and she came over to check on me, and she mentioned, she had to leave and go to her other job, and she's a realtor. And we got talking about sales a little bit, and she said, I used to be so shy, and people would call me for a listing, and they would ask me a question, and I would start to answer it, and then they would hang up. So now when people call me, all I say to them is, hey, tell me about yourself. And she can't get them off the phone. And her sales have
Yeah.
increased through the ceiling. So kind of the
Yeah.
same principle, getting to know the person first, right?
Everyone loves to talk about themselves,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's just human nature. And it's if you can redirect the conversation and get the customer talking, you got two ears, one mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk. And if you can have that mindset, and if you can learn, I think the other part, and I know we'll talk about it, but one of the skills that's important is the art of listening, right? I think a lot of people listen to respond instead of listening to understand.
Mm-hmm.
If you can learn to listen to understand, and then respond, then you're going to be better off. And I think what you said is redirecting the conversation, listening to the customer, asking more questions, and not telling. It's so easy. Like your first example of her is she would talk through the deal instead of talking to the deal, right?
Yep.
And they don't want to just sit there for 3 minutes and listen to you talk.
Right. Yeah. Well said. This next line, this next statement, Tim, really intrigues me. I call this the psychology of sales. Whoever appears to care least about a deal wins.
That's right. Well, that goes right back to the mental ownership, right? It's whoever's willing to walk away from a deal is the one that's going to get the best deal. It's kind of the art of the deal type thing.
Sure.
It's if they perceive that you're willing to get up and walk away, then usually you're going to win. Have you ever offered somebody money for something? You're like, I'll give you whatever, $500 for that, and they look at it and say, okay, I'll take it. What's the first thing that goes through your mind? It's, oh, I offered too much. Let me talk to my wife, and then I'll let you know tomorrow, because you're expecting a little back and forth, and you gave them an offer, and they're like, heck yeah, and you showed your cards that you wanted that product more than they necessarily wanted to sell that product, right? And it doesn't mean it's whoever appears to care least, right? It doesn't mean you don't want to sell it, but if you're selling, it really goes to, are you selling out of inspiration or desperation?
Right.
Right. And if you're using a beggar's clothes, please buy, what's going to take during your business, then you're negotiating, you're selling out of a position of weakness instead of selling out of a position of strength. And if you can learn to sell out of a position of strength versus weakness and not beg, doesn't mean you don't want to sell it, but you don't want to have that beggar's mindset or that aura around you of please buy. It's kind of like when the Apple phones used to come out. People would camp in line for a week to be able to get it. They wanted it more than Apple wanted to sell it, and it didn't matter that it was double their car payment to buy that phone, right?
Yeah.
So it's appearing. It doesn't mean you don't want to sell it, but man, it's kind of a poker face.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. How can you? So let's say somebody walks from the lot, right? Walks from the deal. How can you rope that back in later without it being sort of a chase, like that desperate look or that desperate chase, if you will?
Well, then I have to give the customers reasons to come back, right? And I'll never say that I would not use a beggar's clothes mindset at a certain point. If I'm going to lose it, I'm going to do whatever I can to save that deal. If it's discounting or throwing things in or whatever it is, but that can't be the first thing that we jump to, right? So when I follow up with those customers, is there something that I've missed that I could show them on how this is the perfect product for that customer? So did I miss something along the way? And then number two, what are incentives? What are hooks? What are additional things I can include to help entice that customer to take action? Sometimes it could just be an urgency or a fear of loss that those cars, the program's going away. We're not going to have that vehicle anymore. We're down to the last one. If I know that's the right one, then I could do fear of loss or urgency statements that programs are going away or vehicles are going away or we don't have the inventory. With the tariffs, right? We don't know what's going to happen with inventory. Is it going to be going down? Well, man, that's a great reason. Take advantage now because we don't know in 3 months or 6 months. We know nothing. Probably nothing's going to change, but we don't know that. So you might be able to save, I don't know what, 20, 30% on this car, even if you paid sticker price on what this same car is going to be in 3 or 6 months when the tariffs kick in. So it's that same mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Great point. How did you come up with the 4 quadrants and maybe talk a bit about it, the 4 quadrant approach?
Yeah, on selling, I think processes are very, I don't want to say complicated, but you got like the 10 steps or the 7 steps. Number one, you got to have a process. Any successful person has a repeatable process. I don't care if it's a football team, I don't know, basketball player shooting a free throw or a salesperson selling. Got to have a process. But my whole mindset was let's simplify the process. Quadrant 1 is very simple. It's get to know the customer, right? Do a pattern interrupt. Have them sell you their car first. Quadrant 2 is present and demonstrate your product. Quadrant 3 is get a commitment or open their objections. Quadrant 4 is just negotiate a win-win, right? So it's very simple. There's just 4 parts of the sale.
Gotcha. Okay, just a couple more questions here for you, Tim. Thanks for your patience. So you talk about pattern interrupts. I hear that a lot, but people probably don't know what those are. Can you give an example or two?
Yeah, pattern interrupt is just doing something out of the ordinary, something different than what they've experienced in the past. Like, for example, and I'll use a car dealership as an example, but you go to a car dealership, salesperson greets you, yeah, I'm looking for an new SUV, right? Whatever model. Most salespeople just start walking the lot with you, right? Wandering the lot, looking at cars, reading window stickers, getting sticker shock, all that. And I believe in a pattern interrupt. It's like, man, that's awesome. So are you adding a vehicle or to the family, or are you looking to replace one? Well, we're going to be replace one. Really, what are you driving now? So I'm going to do a pattern interrupt. Instead of me trying to sell you a car right away, I want you to sell me your car. Tell me all about your car so I can get you the most for it. I'm going to get you an appraisal on your car, professional appraisal. Even if you buy from us, you'll know exactly what that car's worth. And I'm going to handle that up front and find out what you liked about your car, what you didn't like, what you want different on a car, instead of just wandering the lot looking at 200 cars they have sitting out there and trying to pick one. So that's just one simple example. There's other ones in service departments, but what it's really kind of being disruptive to the normal process. What can I do without sacrificing the integrity of the sales process? How can I interrupt that traditional process to make it more customer friendly and customer focused?
Got it. Yeah. And one thing that I think you've interrupted in the process is you have identified that when somebody comes in to trade in their car, let's say, and the car salesman is walking around the car and he takes the penny to the tread of the tires,
Yeah,
how intimidating that is, right? And you talk through in your book, how to sort of make them feel a little bit more at ease. Maybe
yeah.
speak to that for a second.
Well, yeah. I just want to have a conversation with you. Here's the best way I always tell salespeople: walk around their cars if you're going to buy it yourself. You're going to write a check, your bank account. How would you have a conversation with a customer, right? And I would just want to know. So tell me about the car and how do you like it, and why are you looking to replace this vehicle, and what's most important in your next vehicle that you didn't have on this? What'd you like about this that you didn't have? Wow, I see you have. I see you're a Hornets fan, right? Man, that's awesome. Too bad that you're a Hornets fan. Right? It's hard to be excited, or what It
Yeah.
just have conversation on car seats, ski racks. Doesn't matter. If you walk around your car, people's life is in their car or on their car or around their car. And if I can do that, it just makes it easier to find common ground and put them in their comfort zone, right? It's like safe base when you play tag as a kid. Now it's really going to be conversational.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Um, okay, just a couple more here and we'll close this up. But with all the information out there, Tim, and so many people without direction, up and coming salesmen, saleswomen, how can someone master sales? How can someone master sales?
Well, number one, I don't think you ever master sales, right? It's I guess you can use the 10,000 hour rule that people talk about. I think the best way to be as good as possible in sales is continual education. It's asking that question every morning when you wake up. What am I going to do today to be better than I was yesterday? And then do something about it. And that question only applies if you ask a follow-up question. At night, when you get ready to go to bed, ask yourself, based on what I did today, am I better than I was yesterday? And if you can't say yes, then you pissed away today, right? And we only got so many. And the older we get, the more we realize how important every day is. And look, some days you're not going to get better. Some days are just you existed. Other days you succeeded. But I think so often we spend a lot of time existing versus succeeding. Just go to the airport. Watch people walk around the airport. Go to the mall. Watch people walk around the mall. How many are existing and how many are succeeding? And I think it's that continual education. What can you do to challenge yourself? Look, we're not all created equal when it comes to being salespeople. It's just like athletes. Look, I can work as hard as I want to be a center for the Lakers, but it ain't ever going to happen. Okay, it, you know every salesperson is not going to be a 50 car a month salesperson. But if you're 8 a month now, can you get to 10? When you get to 10, can you get to 12? When you get to 12, then once you start getting to 12, all of a sudden getting to 15 is easier than it was going from 8 to 10. And when you get to 15, it's easier to get to 20 than it was to get to 15, right? So it's really that compounding interest. Was it the Bernacchi spiral? 1 plus 1, right, is it equals 2. 1 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5. So it spirals. It either spirals up or
Mm-hmm.
it spirals down. You do your job at follow-up today. All of a sudden, that's 1 plus 1, right? So now you're at 2.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow, you work on your closing skills. Now all of a sudden, it's 2. 1 plus 2 is 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then it becomes 5, and then it's kind of compounding. Right. And if you can think of the golden spiral and what little action can I do every day to create that multiplier effect? I don't even want to get into math with you being an engineer, but I'm sure you've heard of the golden spiral and all that before.
Right.
But I think that's probably the best thing you can do to master it is don't try to make giant leaps. It's just those little things every day you do better are going to add up.
Yeah, I think that's true outside of sales. That's true as an athlete, like you said. Yeah.
Well, look, the funny thing about the golden spiral, it really clicked with me because I was at my son's 15. He's a pitcher, and he was at pitching lessons, right? And when he went to pitching lessons, we got this great coach, Kyle, his former pitcher. He's very, very, very intelligent. And my son Cooper just came off a bad outing. He walked 8 freaking guys in 2 innings. That's terrible. Okay. And especially with my background. And then he started explaining to Cooper the golden spiral, down or up, and how, tell me if this happened. You threw the first ball. You're like, I have to throw a strike. And then you threw another ball, and you're like, damn it, I can't throw another ball. Now the negative starts.
Yeah.
Then you walk the guy, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't walk this next guy. And before you knew it, he walked 8 guys and was getting pulled out of the game after in the second inning out there. And I'm like, that's sales.
Mm-hmm.
That's sales. It's life. It's everything. It's that one bad choice leads to the next bad choice, and then those bad choices keep multiplying down, or the other way, the positive. So really, I'm not taking credit for the whole thing. Kyle Abbott, he's the one that brought it up with me, or with my son, and I'm like, dude, that's life. That's not just being on the dirt bump on the mound pitching. It's everything.
So true. So true. Last question, Tim. This has been a great conversation. And before we get off, I do want you to talk about your books. But this is my last question. Any nuggets of wisdom for somebody that wants to be an entrepreneur, such as yourself or me, that have made that leap, that are too scared today? Any wisdom?
Oh, it's not a big believer that you quit everything you're doing and you're going to start there. I think you make yourself so valuable. Whatever it is that you're offering, people are going to want. People are going to buy it, right? If you're just looking for that one business you're going to start because it's exciting, but you're not passionate about it, then it's probably not going to happen, right?
Sure.
So it's really, if you make yourself so valuable at a specific skill, product, whatever it is, then it's going to explode, and then you'll love what you're doing. But if you hate it every day when you come in, and look, you're not going to love everything about any job you have, any business you start. But like I said, man, make yourself valuable, have a product, have a skill, and then everything else is going to start taking care of itself. Then get educated on running a business too, because I knew nothing about it either.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to college for 4 years. You're an engineer. I went to college for 4 years, stayed eligible to play baseball for 4 years, but I don't have enough credits to get a 2-year degree. So I don't know how I did it. Well, anybody can get a degree. But stay eligible for 4 years, but don't have a 2-year degree. Yeah, it's pretty good. That's what I'm proud of.
Very nice.
So really, just find a passion.
Yeah. Yeah. You said earlier, don't chase the money per se, and I'm not hearing you say chase the money now, and that's excellent advice. As the CEO of a consulting firm, I do learn about sales every day, like you're saying, and I do ask questions, and probably I should ask for feedback from some of my customers, but I get it anyway, and I really do try to take that, and the longer that I'm in it, the less pressure I put on myself. I just notice things flow when I put less pressure on it. Okay.
It's like golf. Golf. I don't know if you golf, but if you try to overswing and crush the ball, it goes nowhere. If you're nice, long, and smooth, it's when you hit it 300 yards down the middle of the fairway, right?
Yep.
Stop overswinging and just be nice and smooth, and have that repeatable process and trust the process.
Yep. Let it be natural. Okay, so Tim, before we let you go, and again, you have been a wonderful guest. The listeners don't know, but we've had some technical errors today, some issues, and you've been, again, very patient. Tell us about your 2 books and where we can find them.
Yeah, so I got 2. One of them's for sales, one's for managers, right? Leadership. Frictionless Closing and Negotiating with a Purpose is all about selling. If you're not in the car business, the process, the steps, everything still applies. The words are going to be different. But I wrote this first because there's more salespeople than managers, and I wanted to get this in their hands as soon as possible because so often salespeople don't have managers and leaders that actually are going to train them and help them get better. Sometimes you got to do self-improvement. And with Frictionless, you can get it on Amazon or you can go to kintzgroup.com. Also have it on there. So, and then we also I have Fearless, which is leading and managing with purpose. I'd love to do moving forward if we want to do a podcast down the road on Fearless too, on leading. This is, to me, it's a great book. And I try to, again, just like simplifying the sale process, I simplify the management process. Really bring it down to 4 parts: lead, manage, train, and coach, right? That's 4 skills that you have to be a great leader, in my opinion. There's a lot of characteristics and stuff that you got to have, but as far as the specific skills, and this is, again, applies to any manager, any leader that has a sales team, leads any people. And this was the second one I wrote. Both of them were Amazon bestsellers when we released them. I have them translated. Frictionless is translated in Russian and Spanish. Fearless is just translated into Russian right now.
Cool. Well, I love the titles. I love your systems approach. That's what I am, a system industrial engineer. So I love that, but I'm shocked that no one took those titles prior to you. Very cool. We'll have to drop a link so that people can find where to buy them. But Tim, thank you again. And just hang on for a minute after this recording. But thanks for being a guest.
Yeah, anytime.